Hi, everyone. I'm Will Polen. I'm Senior Director at United States Energy Association. And I'm going to talk a little bit about global trends. And if we're successful here, I will link it to their impacts on North America and the Americas and try to bring it down to the level where it's practical information for you as modelers who are putting together and designing the future of our energy system. First, a little bit about us. I don't think many people know who we are. We're a small organization headquartered in Washington, D.C. We have about 30 people that work at USEA. We're a convener in the domestic energy space. We bring together policymakers, regulators, energy companies, and financial firms to talk about the clean energy transition, energy security, reliability, and all the things that go along with it. But we also have an international presence where I think, I'm proud to say we punch above our weight. We're present in 80 countries, and we're helping those countries in the developing world in particular bring in the clean energy transition. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing globally and then link it back home. We've been around for about this is our 100th anniversary this year, and we work, as I said, across many, many countries globally. So where are we now? This is a map of the population density of the world. And I'm showing this to you because you can see that the population density is centered in developing countries. And there will be a demographic change. I would make an analogy to the same type of change that the United States saw with the baby boom generation, where this demographic change will drive changes in the energy sector to the extent that we haven't really imagined them. If you can think of pressure on fuels, if you can think pressure on water resources, if you can think about pressures on critical minerals, you will see this happen as the folks as the developing countries continue to grow in their population density. There are still more than a billion people that do not have access to commercial energy in the world. They rely on fuel wood, they rely on dung, they rely on kerosene, and they want to live the same quality of life that you and I have the opportunity to live. And they're entirely right to feel that way. The impacts on people who don't have access to electricity fall particularly hard on women and children who are required to gather fuel in terms of firewood, gather water where there's no water pumps. That decreases their ability to be in the workforce or for children to be in school. And so you're going to see that the people in these regions want to have access to commercial energy. And they're going to try to get it in the most inexpensive way possible, which means that to a certain extent, they're going to rely on fossil fuels until we solve the problem of storage, transmission, and other attributes that we've been discussing here today. In November, the world reached 8 billion people. We're going to see another billion people added by 2037. And we're going to see the impacts of this growth throughout the energy sector. At the same time, this is going to impact here at home and in North America. Because that pressure their growth in energy demand is going to come with increasing emissions, and that means that we're going to have to double down on our clean energy transition to make up the difference. And we're already doing a great job of it, as we've talked about here today. But now, unlike in the past, as we've talked about this morning, we're beginning to see a lot of growth in our energy, particularly in our electricity growth, which we hadn't seen in the past. So again, we're going to have to try to meet the climate change imperatives while at the same time increasing demand to accommodate for more emissions that will most likely come out of the developing world if we want to keep the planet to avoid the catastrophic elements of climate change. So from our perspective, we see that there needs to be a concerted effort to accelerate the pace and scale of the energy transition in a multifaceted approach, investing in R&D in the United States, implementing supportive policies and regulations, and promoting international collaboration. The United States, with the passage of the bilateral infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, has already committed more than $1.3 trillion to clean energy projects since 2020. A lot of that money now is just rolling out. This is designed to support, as you know, the clean energy transition, electric vehicles, R&D on carbon capture and storage, hydrogen. And here's a map that the Office of Energy and the Office of Clean Energy Development in the Department of Energy shows in terms of the different types of pilot projects and R&D projects that are scattered throughout the United States. So you'll see there's hydrogen hubs, there are carbon capture projects, there are direct air capture projects, SMRs and nuclear projects as well. And these are demonstration projects of technologies that are not yet commercially viable, but seem to be on the horizon. And they will have particular impact, hopefully, in supporting our clean energy transition. As we talked about, as our colleagues from Microsoft mentioned, we're beginning to see the rise of AI, the role of data centers, and the ability that AI brings to managing this clean energy transition. But we have challenges. We have growth in electrification that the data centers bring. We have issues with supply chain for supporting the backup power for the data centers. We have difficulties, as we discussed, citing transmission and distribution, and we have supply chain problems in the transmission sector as well. I hope that what we're able to do is give you a sense of the challenges that we foresee over the next several years, over the next decades from the global perspective. And to give you some food for thought about how to think about modeling these challenges and how they're going to affect the transition here in the United States. One last thing I'll say is I work very closely with Plexos. They're a member of USEA, as many of you are in the room, and I'm glad to see so many of you here. Had a chance to talk to quite a few of you. And a project that I work on in Eastern Europe is working on accelerating the clean energy transition in the countries in the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. They're going through the exact same changes that we are here, and they use the models we're using the models that Plexos and Energy Exemplar provide to answer the same questions that you are. And I'm really, as a person who spends more time overseas than I do domestically, I'm really amazed and astounded at the similarities that I see between the European transition and our transition here. The complexity and the robustness that Plexos brings to the table is enabling us to take a look at the clean energy transition challenges in Eastern Europe. These countries are looking at assimilating and becoming members of the European Union. Some of them in Eastern Europe are still not part of the European Union, even though they are in Europe. They have to meet the laws and regulations and climate change imperatives of the European Union. And I think that Plexos is really allowing us to take a look at the policy, how the policy impacts their transitions, create multiple scenarios, develop multiple assumptions, as we've heard from the modelers here earlier, and enable these countries who are just 25 years outside of the socialist communist economy to integrate more fully with the clean energy transition, to develop their markets and bring capital, badly needed capital, to the sector. So I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with Plexos, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I hope that my little brief talk today gives you some food for thought as you think about modeling your company's future here in the United States. Thanks so much. If there are questions, I'll be glad to take them, but otherwise I'm the last speaker before lunch, and so you've been a very attentive and patient audience, and I understand if there won't be any questions.
Over here on your left side, Nathan Lee with E3. Just really appreciate the kind of global perspective you just shared. Before coming to E3, I worked on a lot of international programs as part of a national lab, so worked closely with USEA. Wondering kind of how consultancies and groups here in the US that do have some experience and these capabilities can support your work and other work internationally, and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. First I want to say that as I mentioned earlier, the experience that we see in Europe and in some of the more advanced developing nations mirrors exactly the same challenges we have here. And so yes, there are great opportunities for consulting companies who want to apply what we're learning here to the situation in the countries in which we work. I should have mentioned that we're funded, the projects that we work on internationally, we're funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is an independent agency within the State Department that manages humanitarian and technical assistance. USEA, we have a staff of 30 people. We're working in 100 countries or so. We've worked in 100 countries or so. We don't have the technical expertise or the subject matter expertise. So we're project managers. We get funding from the government and we implement projects on behalf of the government, but we hire consulting firms. And so what we're learning here can be transferred overseas very effectively. The trick for American consulting companies that want to take this jump into international is that while the challenges are the same, we're worlds ahead in terms of the complexity and sophistication of markets. And so I think what we have to do is as Americans, when we go overseas, we have to generalize our experiences and sort of walk back 15 years or so and say, what were we doing 15 years ago? And can we apply those lessons to where these countries are today? So I think that's a great question. Thank you for it. I would welcome people who are interested. I'd love to talk to you about that.